Hey, welcome back to my watercolor channel, and today I paint a Willow Tit. They are actually quite common here in northern Finland, and especially during the winter time you can meet them quite regularly if they are looking for seeds from the feeding places. I really like this bird because it is quite small but quite brave, and it's not flying away immediately when it sees you. Besides, it's one of the birds I can recognize its singing or calling. I thought that I would use warm and a little bit coldish colors. Its characteristic colors basically black, so it has a very round head, and then it's mostly upper half is covered in black feathers. However, I do not want to start to add too much of the black as a first layer, so I add a very light layer of indigo blue mixed with a slightly ultramarine blue here. Then I continue to add more of a warmer colors, which I mixed out of yellow ochre and some cadmium red, so it's a very light orange. I have a reference picture where I orientate myself, and there are some of those different colors there as well. But usually I would say they're quite whitish and then black. However, as this is a painting, I want to add more of artistic ideas. You can see here as well a bit of a greenish, light grey greenish colors, which are in the middle of the chest, and it's basically I added to the warmer color some of the indigo blue, so it gives more of a balance. I add here as well some of the tail. And then I continue with the branch where it's sitting, and here I really wanted it to have strong and warm colors, so I mix a nice brown out of ultramarine blue, yellow ochre and some cadmium red, while adding quite a lot of the cadmium red to give a very specific warmth. I also add some stronger contrast to the branches, so adding really strong indigo blue, which contains a lot of pigments. And while the paper is still wet, I add some of the turquoise blue at the top, because the birdie is sitting on the branch, which is covered still in snow. And in order to create the idea of snow, I sprinkle some salt. And here the paper was still sufficiently wet, so I was still able to add more of the indigo blue to make a contrast between the snow-covered area and then a shadow area onto the branch. And I try to add more form to the branches, so adding a bit of more of a warmer brown and then the blue as well. I continue with the bird and adding some of the light green color. As well as a darker area to the tail of the bird. and then more emphasizing the single feathers on to the head or underneath the head. So I'm actually quite careful because this bird doesn't have much of the contrast as like on the chest. Of course there's a big contrast between the head and the tail as well because they're very dark, but I wanted to add more of a round form to its chest areas as well, so I use a lot of wet to wet and trying to add very light colors. As I said, the birds are quite common around here, and I believe as well as in the UK. However, their numbers have decreased quite badly in a few years, especially here in Finland as well as in the UK. The reason why they prefer the nesting area to be, for example, in old woods or old barks, and it might be quite difficult to find as many of the forest areas are used for housing and other purposes, so it's more difficult for them to find a suitable nesting area. The numbers are not being considered as threatened at the moment. However, as the numbers are decreasing so rapidly, and in Finland it's being discussed whether they are vulnerable species. And I continue here with the chest area of the bird, so just adding more of the darker colors, especially underneath the beak, and then just adding more of a stronger contrast, so around the head or where its characteristic feathers are aligned, and on the feet. I thought I add another layer of snow or turquoise blue onto the branch, and there's where some more of the salt as well. So adding more structure and adding some hard edges to make it more realistic. I had a little bit of an accident adding too much of a pigment turquoise blue, but I fixed it basically by adding more of the salt and water. I continue with the background, so here I use clear water basically to work the wet to wet. I don't want the background to be too sharp. I use the colors that I have used before, so it's basically turquoise blue, some indigo blue, and then emphasizing a little bit the branch as well. If it feels like there is too much water and too much paint, you can of course take it off with a clean brush. As my painting is tilted, I usually have to take off some of the paint. My idea here is to add more of a blurry background to the feathers around the on the bird, and so it's kind of like mixing with the background as well, and not just adding sharp edges, especially on the head. And here I use more of a mixture of Payne's grey and a little bit of an indigo blue to have very strong colors. That is well the same colors that I have used for the chest to emphasizing the left side of the bird, so having more of this yellow ochre cadmium red mixture, but it's very weak. And then adding some of the feathers. I was thinking whether it would be quite good idea of adding some further away hanging branches, not standing hanging, but left side I decided maybe not, because it would distract too much from the Willow Tit, so I added more of the turkeys below. While the background is still drying, I work on the chest and then underneath the branch. So here I continue as well, adding some of the turquoise blue as well as of some of the a little bit after the yellow ochre, and kind of gives the idea that there is something further away in the background, but it does not take away the attention from the main branch and from the birdie. I add some salt here as well because I wanted to have some nice structure. Then I continue with the eye of the birdie, so it is quite small, and I'm very careful adding different layers because I don't want it to be too flat. And the eyes are quite important. I haven't used any masking fluid as such, so I'm quite careful to add the paint there. And then I look a bit more where to add more of shadows and like a middle tone. But not to overdo it too much, although there's quite a danger here. Adding more of the warm colors and giving a strong leg, so claws, not legs, claws. So it's really kind of sticking out from the snow area. Emphasizing a little bit of the tail, and then adding more of a structure to the branch, so it's really like popping out. I use this quite a big brush to do so, so I'm able to spread the colors quite evenly and nicely, because I don't want the layer to be too strong, but having a very light, kind of like a glazing area there. And then to the right side I add more of a branch, but it's light in the color, so it's not too much, although here I added a bit too much of the turquoise blue. Of course, why the area is still quite wet, I can take it off. I try to work myself this way that the branch stays emphasized as well as the bird. So adding a little bit layers to the background, and basically adding a nice structure, eye-catching structure. And the paint around the eye or in the eye has dried, so here I add with a thin brush as well some more of a stronger paint spray and emphasizing the form of the bird. But we are nearly done here. So a bit more of the clothes to add more of a little bit of a shadowy areas, and as well as onto the branch. but in a way that the first layer still shines through quite nicely, and then working onto the eye close laser, adding the little bit of a roundness to it as well as to the beak. And that's basically it. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I see you next time. Bye.